Assalamu alaikum. I'm Zahid Jaffery and I welcome you to another episode of this book review series that we started last week. Today, again, we'll talk about a book on Pak-US relations, but this time the book is on the recent um, history of Pak-US relations, especially with reference to the Afghan War 2.0 that started in October 2001. The book is titled No Win War, The Paradox of Pak-US Relations in Afghanistan's Shadow. It is authored by Zahid Hussain. This is the book. It recently got published from Oxford University Press, Pakistan, and it's readily available across the country. Zahid Hussain has covered Afghanistan and the war on terror and written about it since the past so many for the past so many decades. Um, the book has very succinctly traced um, the impact of the Afghan War 2.2 on Pak-US relations. And it has fittingly started off with a snapshot of how the US started its litany of mistakes. Um, the mistakes started from what Zahid calls the original sin, which is how after pulverizing the Taliban, the US was unable to, um, you know, introduce a dispensation which was in harmony with the situation in Afghanistan. Um, the bond process is covered in detail in the book. The selection of Hamid Karzai, if I were to put it very bluntly, is also detailed in the book. And also, Zahid has done a good job in uh, helping us understand as to how the US scuttled all efforts, however piecemeal they might have been, to bring in receptive elements of the Taliban in the fold of the government. So the idea was, and we all know when we talk about Afghanistan and US war efforts in Afghanistan, we do understand that the dispensation that evolved after the October campaign of the US forces was, it was a hodgepodge, and it did not take into account the ethnic composition of Afghanistan, and it was actually a case where an alien force with little to no understanding of Afghanistan was trying to dictate terms, and it did not work. And eventually, as Zahid's book points out, the Taliban recuperated, and then, of course, things went haywire. And the book is good in the sense that it also details how uh, Pakistan and Afghanistan started to, you know, lock horns. Um, there's a there's a mention of how much ill will there was between uh, General Musharraf and Hamid Karzai, and with General Musharraf actually not even considering Hamid Karzai as someone credible. So that really affected Pak-Afghan relations. And of course, this also had an impact on Pak-US relations because the US saw no point in talking to the Taliban, and this thing really got on the nerves of their policymakers. And there was a time when talking to the Taliban was a taboo subject in Washington D.C. Um, and this is exactly what happened. The approach that Pakistan wanted the US to adopt was sharply in contrast to what the US was thinking. Um, I would be very blunt in saying that um, the US not only failed at the strategic level in Afghanistan, it also failed at the operational and tactical level. And this book is a very good um way for you to be introduced to all those tactical follies that the US made over the years. The book has very neatly and lucidly mentioned how the how things started going haywire. The other important element in this book is that um, the distrust that was created between Pakistan and the US over how to carry on this effort in Afghanistan, that was further exacerbated by our own civil military tiffs, especially after 2008. Um, the civilian government and the military were not on the same page when it came to Afghanistan, when it came to how to deal with the US. And the US was also showing its lack of understanding of how Pakistan operated. It was trying to woo the civilians, and the civilians were trying to woo the Americans. And this obviously did not go down well with the army, and the army was trying to, run its own course. And this actually, really affected the fundamental nature of Pakistan relations. Because it's one thing to not trust your partner, your ally, but it's quite another to not even trust your own countrymen. So this was a concern that was really plaguing Pak-US relations, and also the internal politics of Pakistan. Um, the book has very mm, outstandingly, rather, talked about the year of grief, I would call. I call it a grief because the year 2011 was very momentous in Pak-US relations in all the wrong ways that you want to call it. We had the Raymond Davis saga. You know what happened. The civilians wanting to pass the buck on the army, and the army obviously taking that space. Then we had the Aptabat Operation, and the Aptabat Operation was emblematic of how much mistrust Pakistan and the United States had developed between them. Which the book has obviously talked about how General Kiani, when he was informed about the incursions inside Pakistani airspace, he was, actually his first reaction was maybe they're here to get our nukes. So this really showed how much of a gulf both countries had between them, and it was very, it was becoming insurmountable by the day. That coupled with all the American shenanigans in Afghanistan, which were not delivering the goods, really, made the situation terrible for both countries. Then, obviously, uh, half-hearted attempts to talk to the Taliban also did not work. Uh, we could talk about how AROD was, um, you know, engaged with, and then we also see in this book how the Murray meeting took place and how much of an influence Pakistan had on the Taliban. And this is something very critical to our understanding of what lies ahead for Pakistan and the United States. So this book has actually documented how difficult it was for Pakistan to bring the Taliban leadership to Murray. And it also tells us a very important thing that should be a critical uh, talking point for Islamabad when it engages with the United States, with Washington going forward, that we can only do so much for Afghanistan. So this book uh, hence becomes a must read. I should be very frank about it. The other important thing is that this book also points to the importance of civil military harmony in Pakistan. And I can recall I was in Washington, D.C. When Prime Minister Imran Khan visited Washington, and in his talk at the USIP, he categorically said that I and the army are not on different pages, and I while sitting here and talking to you, I'm talking for my army as well. So this statement was sharply in contrast to whatever was happening between 2008 to 2018. So if we are to talk to the United States with a single voice, with a unanimous voice, we need a very robust and a very healthy civil military engagement in Pakistan, and that is what is happening as of today. And this is why we are now at least clear in the sense that do more would be matched by done enough. And this is why we see that despite the fact that our gamut of relation is pretty limited as of now, um, things have not, you know, crossed a tipping point and tensions have not come to the fore because the voice from Islamabad is one. The problem was that the voice from Islamabad and Pindi from 2008 to let's say 2018 was not actually one. So this is something that we need to understand. So this book, I would again urge you all to read this book, and you'll get to know the intricate details of what is actually marring Pak-Afghan relations and how is all that impinging upon Pak-US relations. So this is it from me today. I look forward to talking to you in the next episode with a new book. Thank you very much.